here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Hello everyone, this is B Harper from Supermaster.com and welcome back to another review. As you can probably guess, I'm going to be looking at John Carpenter's They Live, made in 1987, starring Rowdy Roddy Piper, may God rest his soul, and Keith David. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that during the 1980s, John Carpenter was a hugely democratic individual, and in response to the very Republican stance taken by Ronald Reagan and his constituents, he decided to make They Live. But They Live is more than just a political social satire, it is many other different things. For one thing, it is a condemnation about the over-consumerism and the greed that society has. And this goes for every single society. He's not actually just singling out the American society, even though, his films are highly, rooted in American culture. But the central fact is about They Live is that every single society, complete with its leaders and complete with its followers and its government, is prone to greed. And also fucking over the small guy in order to, get ahead. It's a very ugly cycle. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So, John Carpenter made this movie about the American dream turned into a nightmare. And he does that on a very literal basis by, replacing, traditional bad guys with aliens. But the thing is, it really doesn't matter as to whether or not these aliens were actually aliens. In fact, as I said, a lot of the creatures in this movie represent John Carpenter's, shall we say, less than ideal feelings towards Republicans, and namely, of course, Ronald Reagan. As is probably demonstrated in one scene, the character played by Rowdy Roddy Piper, Nada, he's watching the television and he sees the president do an address. Now, once again, it is not specifically stated, and there's no sort of familiar recognition in the character's face because he's watching it with his glasses on, so he's just seeing the alien for what he is. But you get a huge feeling that this president that's speaking on the screen and talking about synchronicity and working together and doing as you're told, that's Ronald Reagan. And throughout the entire movie, it really does show that you have those who are in power, and then you have those who are being tread upon. This film is incredibly black and white, and I don't say that with 1 ounce of irony. Considering the glasses that Nada and Frank, played by Keith David, put on, they allow the characters to see, the world for what it truly is. Now, of course, seeing the world in black and white isn't necessarily the way to go, but you have to understand that They Live, for the time it was made, it was a very angry film, but it still had a lot of points to make, especially when it came to consumerism. You couldn't go 2 steps in the 80s without being sold something. Technology, clothing, food, anything to make you feel better about yourself. It was all about status and just spending money, because back in those days, money was just being printed off and everybody just wanted to get their mitts on it. You couldn't look one way without seeing an advertising board for McDonald's or what have you, just showing all these products to you and pressuring you to buy them. And in the case in They Live, it is taken to a very sort of literal standpoint. When Nada and Frank put on their glasses and see the world for how the aliens have made it, it's all about compliance, obey, go to sleep, stay asleep, don't argue, all that type of stuff. And you're probably thinking that this has a lot in common with The Matrix. Well, yes, it really, really does. It all comes back down to how humanity is, when it comes to just being content to rest on our laurels. Most of the time, we don't even bother to try and sort of look past what we are given. We don't try to question what we're seeing or what we're hearing. When it comes to the media, for example, when they show us a very sensationalistic type of news story, it's not until much later you start to sort of ask why. Why is this happening? Why are you reporting it this way? Did this really happen the way you're saying it? It's a very complex web of deception that we live in, but unfortunately it is still something we haven't grown out of. And John Carpenter, being the observant and very, passionate filmmaker he was back in the day, he had something to say about this movie, and it still remains a hugely prevalent factor. Now, you could easily dismiss this film as being another creature feature because it has very strong roots to science fiction, especially from the 1950s, and I won't lie, but it actually serves the purpose of the story. Back in the 1950s, compliance and obeying and trusting your government was like being forced down your throat. You couldn't do anything without the government's permission. Father knows best. Your parents, you gotta idolize your parents, idolize your benefactors and everything like that. They Live is just like that. So going to the sort of the class dynamics here, you have Nada and Frank, who represent the working, honest folks, the humans that are being taken advantage of, but in their numbers they find strength. And then you have the powerful, and sadly enough, even though it is mainly aliens that are subjugating the human race, you still have humans who know that these aliens are doing it, but they're just going along for the ride because they are getting something out of it, even if it means the entire sort of yoking of their civilization. It's unfortunately, it is a truth. It is a very horrible truth that we live with. But, this film isn't just about preachy. This is a really, really fun film. And this is how I feel that you can really hit home a message. Make it entertaining, make it fun, but at the same time, make it relatable. Look, Rowdy Roddy Piper he was a really great actor. And I am so glad that this film is part of his legacy. For the first half of the movie, Nada is a very sort of quiet and introspective individual, but he's also incredibly optimistic. And he plays across from Keith David, he's seen the world, he's very wary, and he's quite pessimistic. And you would think these types of personalities would clash, but in all actuality, when they become united upon seeing these aliens and seeing what's happened to this world, they come together with a lot of other people and they fight. They fight for their freedom. They fight for their civilization. It's really, really cool. And of course, I can't go through this review without mentioning the fight. The reason why this fight works so well is how over-exaggerated it is. There's no doubting Piper's physical prowess. I mean, that the guy was a world-class wrestler, and Keith David himself is an incredibly physical actor. And this whole fight just goes on for about 6 minutes, and they're just plowing into each other. What Nada is trying to do, for those of you who don't know, is he's trying to get Frank to put on the glasses so he too can have his eyes open to the world. But Frank is being hesitant, he doesn't want to do it, and Piper is like, man, put on the glasses, and it escalates into this brilliant fight. Now, you can call it corny or what have you, but that's the charm of it. There is a serious sense of satire to it, as well as great physical comedy. And you could swear that Piper is just having the time of his life filming this fight scene. That the two guys are just completely physical matches for each other, and it's a great fight. I highly recommend you just looking it up on YouTube. If I had to put a cliff notes about this movie, this fight would be there. Everybody else in this film is pretty good in terms of supporting players. One particular actor who plays a man who's in league with the aliens, I'm sorry, I forget his name. He's a very sort of oily individual, but he makes a pretty fair point. At one part of the movie, Nada and Frank are interrogating him as to saying, why are you screwing over the human race? Why are you screwing us and yourself over? And this guy is like, well, I'm getting something out of it. If it means satisfaction, who wouldn't do it? Who would not take the easy way out? I mean, it is far better to sort of live in ignorance rather than just live in suffering. And once again, it just comes down to sort of human reaction to this type of stuff. There are those of us who are not willing to live in ignorance and want to do something about it. Others, not so much. And this isn't necessarily me pointing the finger here, but, the stuff that they talk about in They Live is still highly pertinent, even now. You can't say that this film is dated in terms of its message, because that's the thing with Carpenter, especially when he's, you know, trying to have something to say. No matter what time these films were made in, you still gotta realise that these are real problems. And when it comes to human hubris, it takes us very long to get out of a really bad habit. I mean, just look at smoking, look at war, look at basically causing suffering to others just to make you feel better. I mean, it is an unfortunate aspect of life. Now, I'm of two minds when it comes to sort of ranking this movie. I don't know a lot about the American political standpoint back in the 1980s, and I still don't know that much about it these days. I've only heard very sort of general information, but as a science fiction film, I would say it ranks as, say, a 3.5 out of 5, but as a social commentary and something that really does deserve the respect that it is constantly receiving, this is very much a 4.5 out of 5. And maybe I'm being a little bit lenient here, but look, I can't help it when a film speaks to me, and I can look at it and say, you know what, this is real, this is something that does affect me. So all in all, I give They Live a... Ooh, this is hard. I give They Live a 4.5 out of 5, and I'm going to stick with it. This is a really good movie. It's an important movie. It's fun, it's entertaining, but it never goes too over the top. I mean, yes, there is a lot of explosive violence in this movie, but that's like part of the charm here. This is still somewhat of an escapist type of fantasy, and it really is unfortunate that politics being what they are, they have shifted again very dramatically. So some of you may feel the timestamp in this movie is pretty damn obvious, but once again, it has a very pertinent message to deliver, and you just cannot ignore it. So put your glasses on and see the world as it truly is. But I would not recommend going into a shop and firing a couple of shotgun rounds off. It just, yeah, it's just not that simple. So thank you very much, guys, and as usual, I shall see you in the next video. Thank you once again. Bye bye for now.